Let me ask you a dangerous question, brother. Have you ever looked at a woman and thought, how many men has she really been with? You won't ask her directly. You won't confront her openly. But deep inside, your mind wonders. Because you know one thing for sure. Every past experience shapes the person standing in front of you today. Now let's be clear. This isn't about judgment, hate, or shaming anyone. This is about awareness. Because your choices in relationships will directly impact your peace, your future, and even your purpose. Most men walk blindly into relationships, trusting words without observing patterns. But women, just like men, leave clues about their pasts. And if you learn to spot these signs, you'll know exactly who you're dealing with, without ever asking a single uncomfortable question. In this video, I'm going to reveal 7 psychological and behavioral signs that reveal how many men have truly been in her bed. And I'll warn you right now, some of these signs will shock you, because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Stay with me till the very end, brother, because what I'm about to share will completely change the way you look at relationships forever. Sign number 1. Her views on intimacy have no depth. Let me start with something most men overlook. A woman's philosophy on intimacy tells you everything about her past patterns. You can spot it in her attitude and language. Does she treat intimacy as sacred, or just another casual interaction? Does she attach meaning to it, or does she talk about it like it's just fun? Does she value emotional connection, or does she separate emotions from the act completely? Women who have been with multiple partners often develop a detached mindset, not because they're bad people, but because repetition builds desensitization. Here's the psychology behind it. When someone experiences something deep and personal over and over, it often loses its emotional weight. For a man, that might mean achieving success so often that a big win stops feeling special. For a woman, being with multiple partners can sometimes lead to emotional disconnection. She might use phrases like, "It's just physical. It doesn't always have to mean love. People just need to have fun." Now don't misunderstand me. Not every woman who says this has a large history. But when this pattern of detachment shows up, again and again in her words and actions, it's often a psychological indicator that intimacy no longer carries the emotional significance it once did. A Stoic man pays attention here, because Marcus Aurelius said, "Observe how people act, not what they claim." Her philosophy will reveal far more than her confession ever could. Sign number 2, extreme comfort with explicit conversations. Here's another powerful sign most men ignore. Pay attention to how easily and casually she talks about intimate topics. A woman who has had a long history of physical partners often displays a different level of comfort when discussing those subjects. You'll notice things like she jokes openly about explicit topics. Without hesitation, she uses confident, unfiltered language that suggests familiarity. She rarely shows awkwardness or shyness when the conversation shifts to private matters. Again, this doesn't make her good or bad. This isn't about shaming anyone. This is about patterns. Because the truth is simple. Comfort comes from repetition. If someone has had limited experiences, they're naturally more reserved, more cautious, and less casual when speaking about intimacy. But if she engages freely, throws in jokes, or drops heavy topics like they're nothing, it's often a subtle sign of exposure and familiarity. From a Stoic perspective, you observe without reacting emotionally. You're not judging, you're analyzing. You're not attacking her past. You're understanding her patterns to decide if they align with the future you want. Because relationships are investments, brother. And before investing, a wise man evaluates the terrain. Sign number 3. She seeks constant validation from strangers. Let me tell you something powerful, brother. The loudest clues about a woman's past are not in what she says. They're in what she seeks. And one of the strongest signs that reveals her past patterns is her addiction to external validation. Pay attention to how she behaves online and in public spaces. Does she post overly revealing photos regularly? Is she constantly fishing for compliments from men she barely knows? Does she seem restless without attention? Now, before we continue, understand this isn't about shaming confidence or beauty. There's nothing wrong with a woman wanting to look good or receiving compliments. But here's the difference. When validation becomes an addiction, it usually points toward a psychological pattern rooted in her past experiences. Here's the psychology. The more partners someone has had, the more they tend to associate self-worth with being desired. Over time, this builds a dopamine-driven loop. Post something revealing, get likes, feel wanted, crave more. If she's constantly needing new streams of attention, new male followers, new heart emojis, this behavior can indicate that her value system is built around external approval, not internal alignment. And here's the painful truth. A woman deeply grounded in her value doesn't need hundreds of men validating her daily. She knows who she is. She knows her worth. She doesn't perform for attention. As a Stoic man, you must observe these patterns calmly. Don't get jealous. Don't get angry. Don't try to compete with the noise. Remember this principle from Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. If your goal is peace, why attach yourself to someone who constantly invites chaos by needing endless external approval? Sign 4. She equates love with lifestyle. Here's where most men get trapped, brother. A lot of guys believe that gifts, dinners, and luxuries automatically equal love. But for some women, love has slowly been reprogrammed into a transaction. Here's how you can spot it. Does she judge potential partners based on money and status first? Does she use phrases like, "I deserve a man who provides XYZ," but rarely talks about loyalty, partnership, or growth? Does she lose interest quickly? When material benefits stop flowing, this is not about demonizing women who value security. Security is natural and reasonable, but there's a huge difference between valuing stability and using love as a business deal. Here's the psychology behind it. If a woman has had multiple transactional relationships in the past, her brain rewires itself to equate love with material gain. It's not about her words, it's about her pattern. You'll see it in how she talks. If he really loved me, he'd buy me this. Men are supposed to pay for everything. I can't date someone who doesn't drive XYZ car. This mindset isn't new. It's conditioned over time. A Stoic man must ask himself, do I want a woman who chooses me for me, or for what I provide? Because here's the danger, brother. When love is purely transactional, it only lasts as long as the transaction continues. The moment a better offer appears, loyalty fades. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote: "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." If her love is conditional on lifestyle, you're not building a partnership. You're funding a temporary subscription. Sign 5, her friend circle reveals her patterns. Listen carefully, brother, because this one's subtle, but incredibly powerful. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and the same applies to her. If you want to understand a woman's past, her friend circle is a mirror of her choices. Pay attention to these things. Do her closest friends constantly party, drink, and post wild weekend content? Are they frequently changing partners or talking about hookup culture openly? Do they glorify chaos over stability? If the answer is yes, then here's the truth. Environment shapes behavior. It doesn't mean she's exactly like them, but it means she's comfortable in that world. It means those dynamics don't shock her. They're normalized. Here's the psychology. When someone is surrounded by people making a certain set of choices, the human brain adapts. What once felt extreme becomes ordinary. So if her entire social circle is built around endless validation, transactional dating, and emotional chaos, you need to ask yourself, am I ready to swim against the entire current of her lifestyle? Because relationships aren't just two people, they're the ecosystem you step into. A Stoic man looks at patterns, not promises. She may tell you she wants stability, but if everyone she spends time with is running the opposite way, sooner or later, gravity pulls her back. Epictetus said it best, "Show me your friends, and I will show you your future." Brother, never underestimate the power of influence. Sign 6, her emotional detachment reveals her past. Brother, let me tell you something most men never realize until it's too late. When a woman has been through multiple partners, her relationship with emotional intimacy changes. Not because she's bad, not because she's broken, but because the human brain is wired to protect itself. Here's what I mean. Every time we deeply connect with someone, through love, trust, and vulnerability, our brain releases oxytocin and dopamine. These chemicals create bonding. But here's the catch. The more times you bond deeply and then break away, the weaker the bond becomes next time. It's like tape. The first time you peel it off, it's sticky and strong. But if you peel it off 10 times, that same tape loses its grip. Now imagine someone who's gone through multiple short-term relationships or repeated cycles of intense love followed by breakups. Do you think their emotional bond remains as strong as it once was? No, brother. It's not her fault. It's neurological reality. This is why you often meet women who seem fun, passionate, and engaging at first, but when it comes to real depth, they seem detached. Here's what emotional detachment looks like. She avoids deep conversations about the future. She changes partners quickly without much reflection. She gets bored easily when things become stable. She treats intimacy casually, almost transactionally. Now, some men mistake this detachment for confidence or independence. But Stoic wisdom tells us, patterns reveal reality, not words. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This applies to dating too. You cannot control her past. You cannot fix her bonding system. You cannot make her feel something she's trained herself not to feel. The Stoic response is observation without judgment. See her emotional capacity clearly. Understand what it means for your future. And choose accordingly. Because here's the danger, brother. If you build your life around someone who cannot connect deeply, you'll constantly feel like you're giving 100% of your heart to someone who can only return 20%. And that slow emotional starvation breaks more men than heartbreak ever could. Sign 7. Her view on intimacy and commitment. This is the final and most critical sign, and you must listen carefully, brother. If you want to know how many men have been in her bed, don't just listen to her words. Study her philosophy about intimacy and commitment. Here's why. A woman's belief system always reveals her past experiences. Ask yourself, does she treat intimacy like something casual? Or does she attach meaning to it? Does she see commitment as an honor? Or does she see it as a burden? Does she believe in building with one person? Or does she speak openly about exploring options and keeping things fun? Here's the psychology. The more someone treats intimacy casually, the more likely it reflects a history of short-term experiences. This isn't about judging morality. This is about understanding how patterns shape behavior. Think about it this way. If someone treats relationships like temporary experiences rather than lifelong bonds, they've trained their brain to detach quickly. And here's where most men get hurt. They enter these relationships thinking they're special, believing she'll change because this feels different. But remember this, brother. Past patterns predict future choices. When someone has repeatedly avoided commitment and treated intimacy as low stakes, don't expect her suddenly to wake up one day and value deep loyalty. A Stoic man must lead with rational observation. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This applies here perfectly. If her worldview frames intimacy as meaningless, but your worldview sees intimacy as sacred, you're already walking two different paths. And here's the hard truth. You can't force alignment. You can't force someone to value commitment if her history has trained her otherwise. What you can do, brother, is choose wisely. Observe, reflect, decide. Because ignoring these signs doesn't just cost you your time. It costs you your peace, your energy, and sometimes your entire sense of self-worth. Conclusion. Brother, I know this video wasn't easy to hear. I know some truths can hit like a punch to the chest. But here's what you must remember. This is not about judgment. This is about clarity. Because without clarity, a man walks blindly into chaos. And chaos destroys more men than heartbreak ever will. Women are not the enemy. Ignorance is the enemy. Choosing without awareness is the enemy. The goal of Stoic wisdom is not to make you bitter. It's to make you unshakable. Learn to observe patterns, not promises. Learn to trust behavior, not just words. And above all, learn to protect your peace as fiercely as you protect your heart. Because here's the real truth. The wrong relationship can destroy your purpose, but the right awareness can elevate your life. So walk away smarter, stronger, and calmer. With that said, thanks for watching. And until next time,